Wonderful. Well, welcome back, everybody. We are on the final session or breakout session for today. We have Gregor, he's the CTO and head of product for Gnowbe. I think I'm super interested to know all things AI as it relates to evolution, trends, kind of future, but then also as it links to microlearning and then your role at Gnowbe as well. It would be interesting to see the two being married. So if you are able to switch on your cameras, it'd be really great for you to join. Gregor, I'm sure that you can orientate them to where you want them to be able to go. And stick around after Gregor's session because we have something called connection points, which really is essentially for you. There's some fun kind of giveaways, but then also an opportunity to kind of see a little bit more of our custom landing pages, which just got launched yesterday officially on the first day of our conference. And then also there's a time for networking and collaborating, connecting, and sharing of ideas, which we really love to make space for as well. So stick around after Gregor's session. But Gregor, I'll hand it over to you. Cannot wait to learn, friend.
Wonderful. So again, we are in day 2 still. So if you find yourself in the same program that you have been before, then you are in the right place. Here it's session number 4. So the latest one in the sense that is enabled. Give everyone a moment just to go there because again, a little bit interactivity as well. So it makes sense to read alongside and be able to contribute if you like, of course. All right, I'll start with a little introduction about myself. So like I said before, I'm the CTO and head of product at Gnowbe, around for about 1.5 years now. And yeah, since then, basically refining the application where needed, adding new great features, collaborating a lot with our current customers and future customers to see how we can really build the application further so it fits all the needs. And why I emphasize this is a lot of the times applications are built in the cellar or somewhere in the backyard somehow in the sense of there are little communication with customers, right? And what often comes out is applications that kind of does what they're supposed to do, but very often the UX is not great, or very often certain features are missing, or certain features are done in a way that are not so useful. And I think one great way that I really cherish our company is having this constant conversation with our customers. Customers being the domain experts, right? I mean, we are great. We are also domain experts in our company, and we have the expertise in how to build a product. But that doesn't mean we know everything by far. And often having conversations about certain topics also brings the best out of it. So it's not really about what knowledge we have or somebody else has. It's the collaboration and the sharing of different perspectives that really is a great approach that I really like. But back to my CV, what I did before, largely I worked both in media enterprise company as well as other startups, but more or less often a common topic was AI, particularly chatbots. Back in the days, there were different type of AI applications. I always focused on natural language or things that kind of made computers speak and talk to each other. So if you want, ChatGPT was kind of my vision back then in 2006 of how things going to evolve, that everybody will sooner or later talk to a chatbot and has a chatbot as a personal assistant. And I really love being alive at that time and then seeing that coming to life, because there were others before me that also had the tendency of this 50, 60, 70 years ago, and some might have not experienced this kind of AI wave that is really revolutionary compared to many other let's say AI hype phases before that. Fun fact, I love logic and hate math. That sounds a bit counterintuitive. The reason is I always found it striking for math. It can be really complex. You need to know a lot. You need to use a lot of brain power. But the best you can get out of it is yet another equation. And for somebody that loves math, it's great. But I really cherish logic in the sense of programming, creating something and something comes out of it that you kind of can touch, use, that makes other people happy, these kind of things. And not undermining math. It is sort of the fundament of everything we do here. And also logic is a part in a sense. But yeah, that is just something that always found funny. Math is not so much my interest, but logic is. But let's dive into the AI trends. So this is really the session I try to cover a couple of objectives, a couple of topics. None of them will go really deep. We simply don't have the time for that. But I hope that I can trigger different thoughts and different ideas further down the line. And of course, we can always continue this conversation afterwards. I'm always happy to, talk to anyone that would like to know more, but also anyone that has certain ideas how to accomplish it, and happy to be a sparring partner in that sense. What we're going to do, or what you're going to learn today, hopefully, is some new real-world use cases that have emerged in recent months and years. Just a high-level overview, different areas. And then also, what are common pitfalls? So how can you mess up AI integrations in a sense, right? Or how can you avoid it in a sense? Because if you know what are the wrong ways or the ways of not to do it, then of course it's much easier to avoid it. And then I'll share some of that. We're gonna have a short session about how to do prompts, or things to watch when you work with prompts, and also certain link to it, basically, that helps you identify certain prompts or certain prompt techniques that you can do. I also share a little bit on how current models are being built and how this works, and then at the end, and little outlook of where I believe AI will develop further. Some key stats real quick. I think it's interesting to see this is really something that a lot of people believe in, a lot of businesses, and of course, when there is 91.5%, probably a large chunk of those people are just don't want to miss out on AI, and that's the reason they kind of invest without really knowing yet what to do with it. But I think a large chunk of the industry really understood the benefits that could come from it, and the different applications, and it's really thrilling to see all these kind of investments being done in AI to help improve the world and make it more effective. So little stop here. This is a first interaction element, or first step to turn to the program or to the phone, depending on how you use it. Would be just interesting to scale from 1 to 5. How much have you heard about different AI use cases thus far? And what I mean by that is through media, through news, through people telling you about any different kind of use case, because we keep hearing maybe the same kind of use cases, like you can write an email with ChatGPT or these kind of things, but like how many different things have you heard? And yeah, this is not the right or wrong kind of question. This is kind of more how you rate yourself in that sense. Moving over, we can have a look afterwards when people voted, and then discuss in the last 50 minutes. So couple of successful applications in the AI, and this is by far not the entire list, because it's really endless, and it kind of every day something new pops up. And I picked out a couple of things for education and HR, but also a couple of other areas, just to highlight the major, or the vast majority of use cases that there are. And it's very important to distinguish between like these modern AI approaches that are very popular right now, like large language models like ChatGPT and Claude, Anthropic Claude, and all the other applications, and then other type of AIs that are used for other things that are not language related, where it's more kind of where it's really about a probability of certain things happening and these kind of things. So, but let's go just top to down real quick, because it's not yeah, we don't have to go deep into that. Unless you have questions about it, I'm happy to share more. But in education, what we see, and this is basically a collection of different industry news I have collected over the last few weeks and months. So one thing we see that a lot of people focus on is personalization of learning. It makes a lot of sense since we have AI now, and AI can, similar to like social media, adapt to your needs, or adapt at least to your interests in a sense. There is a clear tendency of trying to personalize AI, tailor making content basically that fits the learner's needs. Tutoring, of course, there is always the case that somebody doesn't understand something because they have a different perspective or different background, different foundation, knowledge foundation. And I think tutoring will always be needed. But the question is, what kind of tutoring is it? Is this high level where you have a coach that helps you through different paths and thinking, or is it really kind of repetitive, trying to learn the subject matter and having a question about it that can be rephrased to understand it better. And the great thing about this, even if I want to learn in the middle of the night, I can do this because AI will be able to be there and not be annoyed if I write a question in the middle of the night just because I didn't understand it, but that maybe the time of the day I have time to study that. Grading, well, I think this is one of the topics that are being tried out. However, this is probably one of the more sensitive topics because grading in the end is, well, there could be a lot of bias, and I think it is still something that humans want other humans to do. But I see the tendencies with a lot of other AI areas that it's a combination of AI tool and a human. So maybe AI would do a first round of correcting or assessing, and then a human would go over it and judge if the assessment was correct, and maybe ideally self-assess and then compare with the assessment of the AI. Learning analytics is also something that AI can really emphasize on, particularly observing certain signals. So a signal, I mean, like a clear signal would be if somebody is really engaged and then all of a sudden they don't engage at all anymore, or don't do certain learning modules. But there are also subtle signals where it's more kind of a sort of a certain drop or a certain spike that you as an analyst might not see immediately, or might don't even have the time to go through every single learner you have and analyze them into the depth. And AI can really help, not taking over the solution, but highlighting that there might be a problem, and or maybe a future problem coming up, because signals are usually not pointing to a great problem yet. I mean, sometimes, but very often they point to problems that are upcoming, that are about to evolve. And I think there could be a lot of interesting features that help creators or agents, anyone that manages a learning group, basically to understand better how people are doing. HR, I think also very interesting, from recruitment to hiring, asking all the questions, aligning with the job. I think usually in recruitment and hiring, you have multiple conversations with an employer, and perhaps, or what I've seen so far is that the first conversation is often done by an AI these days, where it's just about figuring out, is there a practical match between what the person is looking for and what the job is offering. Of course, there is not really the question yet about culture fit and all these kind of things. And I think the further somebody progresses in the job recruitment, the more it is still a human job and should stay a human job to identify a good cultural fit. But I think some companies have a large amount of people applying, right? And often there might not be enough resources to read all of these things. And AI could really help at least screen a little bit to make sure everybody gets the attention that should get an attention. Onboarding, I think one of our bread and butter topics, very important, very effective. Great onboarding can make an employee's life a lot easier. And AI can help in that sense because, well, on the one hand, there might be certain things that a learner just needs to know, or an employee in that sense. But then there might be, again, problems in understanding, or certain ideas that came out of it or whatnot. And if you have an agent or somewhat an AI entity that you are able to talk to and discuss these things and also clarify any questions you might have, that can go a long way. And the reason that is really important and even more effective than the ability to ask a human is embarrassment. I sense the tendency of new people coming into a company that sometimes they are reluctant to asking questions, or just say, hey, I didn't understand something, or something like that. And obviously, you know, you're getting onboarding material, you believe should be good enough, that, and you should understand it, and you might think of yourself, well, I don't want to ask and embarrass myself in the first few days. And I think a chatbot is really non-judgmental in that sense, and I think could really help guide through all the things you need to know without involving other people that don't have the time to focus on you as much. Performance management, predictive analysis. I think there is a lot of value in there in terms of, we talked about it yesterday, or I was listening yesterday to the conversations there were in terms of how long are employees staying at a company on average. And I remember there was a graph that kind of says the longer somebody stays in a company, the less likely they stay. And I the question is, how can we prolong that? Because ideally, a great employee stays for his entire working life at the company, right? As a company owner, as an employer, you want that. And if we find, and I think this is still early stage, these are one of the areas at the early stage, if we find ways to kind of give people signals if certain characteristics changes, and that goes a little bit to the learning analytics as well. So I think there could be a direct relation, because as soon as you stop learning, engaging in these kind of things, then probably the chance are that you might focus on something else. And that could be temporary and everything is fine, but it could also be the first signal of somebody offboarding, at least in their head. Looking at the time, I think I'm still okay. Information technology. So these are just high level, because that's not really the focus of the conference, but I just want to give a broad sense of there's so many different industries that are affected in so many different ways. Cybersecurity is a huge thing. Being able to detect certain attacks much more effectively than it was before. IT service management, sometimes, or well, very often, I must say, when I think about recent events in the past from companies I read about, where certain problems, whether it was IT management or cybersecurity, that originated in some sort of fashion from a human error. And that's fine. We can make errors. That's the human nature. But it does help if you have a secondary line that kind of helps you figure out, especially things like cybersecurity. You don't want to, be vulnerable, and AI can and already contributing a lot in detecting certain things. But I mean, if you're a small company, small project, this might not be such a big thing for you. But if you are working in a large company, then I encourage you to talk to your IT people and ask them how much cybersecurity is necessary or how much attacks they are getting, and they probably will tell you that this is on a common basis, because big companies are always attacked. This is unfortunate, but it's the truth. Healthcare, diagnostic imaging, drug discovery. So there's a lot of things where basically processes are speed up in a sense, so that I wanted to say shorten, but shorten does sound like there are steps in between that are being not made, and I think that's not really the case. I think these AI advancements, particularly in healthcare, are just doing things a lot faster in terms of iterating over certain substances than humans can, and I think this is also an example of freeing time of employees to do more effective things that human can just simply do better. Yeah, and financial service, fraud detection, very important, very hard to detect with regular systems. AI do much better job in this. And then, of course, manufacturing, supply, being able to understand when certain things, where certain things are needed, where is a demand, forecasting a demand, very important. And of course, reducing downtime wherever that is, and predicting downtime, because that is often possible these days. At least with a certain probability. And of course, personal recommendations on e-commerce and retail, and just what is this kind of customer-facing side, if you want, and then of course also optimizing the stock levels internally, inventory management, really important. So this is a long action, and maybe not the very best practice in terms of micro learning, but I just wanted to give this all into one action for the specific reason of showing you how many things there are, and putting that all into one action, because it's really a long list, and it should feel like a long list because it is a long list. And this is by far not covering everything. This is just kind of a best of, if you like. I like this quote, and many quotes these days, particularly about AI. This is a quote from the CEO of Google Alphabet. AI has the potential to transform industries and empower people, but its deployment must be responsible and equitable. And I think that's really the key. So if you are acting responsible, especially with powerful technologies that potentially could have a huge impact, positive as well as negative, then planning and knowing what you're doing makes a lot of sense. And rushing, like some companies do, just doing enabling AI for their customers without really properly testing it, or without a proper use case, and all these kind of things, often backfires. Quick quiz. not taken too seriously, but just as an starting point for our sort of next topic, if you want. Multiple choice. What do you think are common challenges? Is data privacy and security common challenge? Is bias in AI a challenge? What about ethical concerns? Or do you think all of them are a challenge? Giving you guys a moment. So if you click data privacy and security, or you click bias and AI models, or you click ethical concerns, you are correct. However, all of those topics are a concern or are a challenge in their own individual ways. So this is basically now the part of the conversation or the part of the talk where we talk about pitfalls and how to avoid them. And I think one, or really the first thing that I want to introduce here is to not think of AI as a tool. And that sounds weird because there's a lot of AI tools out there. But AI as a topic, AI as a strategy is not a tool. And the reason for that is there is not anything that was there like AI before in terms of capabilities, in terms of practical smartness in the way a certain task can be accomplished. And I think if you, as a employee, company owner, something to do with how AI evolves in your company, I think the most important aspect is to not think it how can we plug in AI somewhere, but like how can AI or how can we use the AI movement to transform our entire organization? Because very often that will be required. Or the other way around, if you don't do it, you're missing out on a lot of potential positive impact it could have. Again, with the right strategy. If you don't have a right strategy, like Gartner reports, then you will likely not be successful. But the funny thing here is you can actually just move away from AI and just say 85% of projects fail due to common pitfalls, because that's kind of the nature AI. It's not new because it's AI, but it's also a problem with implementing AI, similar with other topics as well. So lack of clear AI strategy is probably the most prominent one that is currently out there. A lot of people believe they need it. Everybody thinks it can help their business or even excel it. But a lot of people have no idea what use cases to use it for other than writing emails or, just checking out certain things that you might be needing. And I think it's really the question of why. Why are you using AI, and what do you think? Who is being helped with? And I think who is being helped with is a really good question to ask, because you can also ask how can AI be useful, and that might lead you to certain paths. But I think that in the first instance, helping people, that could be your customers, could be your own employees, could be whoever you're working with. What could AI do to help those people? I think that's a really good question to ask yourself that leads to very interesting paths. So the 2.2, poor data quality and management, is, I mention it because it's an important topic, but it might not be too relevant for you and your organization. So the question is, do you, as an organization, create your own AI? So do you have your own models that you train? Do you have the need for that? Do you have even the data for that and the knowledge to do that? In recent decades, that was kind of what was needed. If you wanted to build an AI, you were pretty much left off. Since about 1.5 years, there's a lot of big companies jumping on the topic of AI and providing all kinds of models, often large models, like large language models, that can be used more or less out of the box and can be tailored in one way or another. But I want to mention it because even if you don't deal with it in your company, whoever you're using that provides the model has this problem. And that's why it's good to be aware of it. So the models can only be as good as the data it learns from. It's similar to education, actually. So people can only get as good as the material you provide them to learn from, or the opportunities in which they are. And if the material is not good, or if the way to do it is not good, then the results will be bad as well. And I think although it's of course very different on how large language models are being trained, or how humans are being trained, but I think it's the quality of the material, or of the baseline you're learning from, is key in any way. So either if you happen to train your own models, it's good to invest in a data governance, or if not, then at least use providers that are being tested by others. So the popular ones, so from ChatGPT over Claude, Anthropic, Google Gemini, and so on and so forth, these models are usually tested up and down, left and right, from all kinds of other companies and providers. There you can do the research and see how these performing, and where are the weaknesses of each. Generally speaking, you cannot avoid that somewhere certain things are a little bit poor in terms of how the model reacts. There will be always something that is not perfect, but the idea is to iterate over it and make it better over time. And these companies do a pretty good job, but it's always good to have an eye on it. 2.3 is probably, again, more concerning. The underestimating the complexity of change management. So why change management, and why AI, and why is this connected? So again, it depends. If your AI strategy is that you have a chatbot in the right bottom corner and that's it, then it's probably not too difficult to implement it. But if it's really used in a process, or in a, how can I say, it's really replacing certain steps that have been done first manually, or simply changing the workflow as it had been done before, then you need all humans, all employees, to buy into that and follow that. And if that doesn't work, then you will find resistance, and will find that's really hard to implement. And I think, again, this is not new, but it's the same thing as other implementing new applications, implementing new things that changes the life of your employees. And I think just to quote one of my good friends, Sindre Wimberger, which is the head of AI movement at the city of Vienna, Vienna, the capital of Austria that I live in, has the opinion that AI can enable every employee to do things they weren't able to do before. So innovation within a company is possible, because if you use AI individually, and I'm not saying like the technology as a part of your infrastructure, but this is really pointing towards individuals using different AI tools in your company to accomplish certain tasks. If you embrace the use of AI tools, and if you, of course, make sure it is correctly understood what AI tools can do, and it's clear that information need to be counter-checked, and so on and so forth. But if you really embrace it, and really make sure people have this as a go-to tool to use, then it can really, really be powerful. One short anecdote before I move on is that back in the days, innovation happened in the IT department. Why? Because these people are the smartest? No. But those people that sometimes had great ideas in other departments could simply not accomplish it, because the toolings or the programming needs were so difficult to accomplish. And often when there were good ideas coming to an IT department, in the past, they had been rejected, or simply done in a different way, or not done at all out of resource problems. But having people being able to do a lot of these things themselves these days can really be powerful. So consider this when you implement AI, to not see it as a technology only, but as an enablement for your employees. Neglecting ethics and ethical consideration and bias. So I would say this is a human problem as well. We all have bias. And the same goes for the large language models that learn based on the data we humans have produced that contain bias. Again, it's as good as the data you provided to learn from. But I think what is important to take away here, expect bias all the time. It's not going to happen all the time. It's going to happen less and less because the models improve. But expecting it or asking yourself, is this a biased question or answer in one way or another? And yeah, just it doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad, but just knowing that and yeah, accepting it in a sense to be biased can be very important, because I think the danger is also that you take everything for granted and the thing is often right and very often right. And at some point you just believe everything because most of the time it is right. And then there's this one time where it's incorrect, and then where the problem starts, right? If you implement AI, I think it's very important to monitor and maintain. Um, Again, it's not an AI topic. It's really, I think, an IT topic. Is a topic of every process you have. Actually, it's not really even technology. It's, I think, generally when you implement something that has something to do with the processes you have, it's really smart to monitor these. And monitoring means coming back to it, checking it out. Does it work well? Doesn't? Maybe not. Can we improve something about it? Is it serving what we hoped it would serve? And yeah, I mean, if you don't build your own model, then the actual maintenance and refinement of the models is not your job. But your job will be to be up to speed with getting all the updates in of the models that are constantly improving. So one way or another, even if you're not the one that actually trains these models, but using the models, you still need to be on top of updates that make sure these models get better. Or maybe they get sometimes worse, then you also need to be aware of it. So that's why this is an important thing to think of and know. It's not, you don't implement AI and then you turn your back and move away. This is something you will need to spend time on a regular basis. Yeah, to closing this action or this particularly area of topic, strategies for overcoming these pitfalls. Like I said, a governance framework, more important if you train the models yourself. But if you have partners that have models or AI services that you use, that's great. Just make sure you understand what are your requirements you want from your AI and communicate this and make sure there's a good match. Keyword, for instance, is also, are things that I do with the large language models being recorded and being used as a training for the models? Yes or no? Am I okay with it? Yes or no? So I think as a company, you should have some sort of a framework, some sort of a company policy even that defines that, so all the employees will know what to do and what not to do. Invest in data quality management. I think it depends a little bit. Again, if you are not training your own model, less relevant. It has a relevance towards the data you have in your company. I'm coming to that point in a second. Yeah, prioritize change management. I can't emphasize more on it. I think if you are implementing AI, then also talking to your employees early and really letting them know what's coming or what you want to do about it, and even include them, because chances are your employees had already touch points with AI and maybe have their own opinions and maybe very valuable opinions. So please don't make all the decisions yourself and don't tell anyone, but really make this an inclusive process. And ethical AI practices is, I think, especially important for those that offer AI solutions, like we are going to be one of those. We will be transparent about what technologies we are using, and we will make sure we stay accountable for the things it does to a certain degree as we can manage it and can cover it. We are only working with companies that really take care that their models are safe. And yeah, different use cases will have different models and different providers. But I think it's really important. If somebody offers AI but doesn't want to tell anything about it, I would ask a second question, because to some degree, they should give you the transparency of telling you where does the data go, what kind of models is being used, at least to rough idea and where all these things are being handled. Yeah, and last but not least, like I said before, that the monitoring and maintenance. making a short stop here again. And again, this is a questionnaire or a question to be answered, but then I'll move on. So we talk about it afterwards. I see I'm a little bit over time, so I'm gonna speed up the rest that I have. But my question would be really think about your current and upcoming AI project. And was there any specific pitfalls that you encountered? And if so, how are you going to address them? Any idea, any thought? But it might be that you haven't even thought about using AI yet, or it's very undeveloped. And my question is, what is holding you back? Really curious about the answers. Okay, so I promised to talk a little bit about prompting before. Prompting is a huge topic that could easily fill a separate talk. That's why I keep it brief. So I think prompting is incredibly important these days when it comes to language models. I say that because there are other models as well that are not language based, and for them, prompting has a less important role. Excuse me. But for large language models, small language models, all these kind of things, prompting is basically how you make the language models behave. So it could be anything when you use it yourself, from write me an email, give me ideas, do a reverse interview, but it could be also certain things on how you define how it should act in your infrastructure. So for instance, you would like to have incoming emails being scanned for certain spams or something like that. Then this could be also a prompt that advises the language models what to do with the stuff that you send to it. But generally speaking, and that goes for both if you implement it yourself, but also if you use AI yourself individually for your own tasks, then probably the best advice is, even if it feels kind of obvious, be specific and clear. And if you think you're a good communicator, human to human, then that doesn't mean that you're good prompted. Unfortunately, not yet. Prompting is still a technique to be learned, and there's a few subtle differences, like you need to provide more context than you think you should, but it improves the result a lot further, or the other way around, it prevents that the language model reacts in a way that is not desired. It's also good to not just say what you want, but then give all kinds of other informations that you could potentially provide. So that could be, for instance, how long should it be? What kind of style? So for instance, the writing style, tone of voice, and maybe even who it is for, because the language model would likely understand the target group you're talking about, and then able to customize it further, or be able to specifically serve the need you were asking for. And I think the number one strategy that when I talk to friends that are working in the same industry is iterate and refine. This is kind of try and error in a sense, if you want, just a positive way of saying it. And that even goes with the prompt you're putting into a ChatGPT. If you're not happy with it, don't close it and say it's bad, but refine. Tell it what's wrong about it. Tell it what you want to have different, and then keep on going. Like my average conversations with chatbots are 18 times back and forth. Why? Because conversations develop, knowledge develops. By the answers I get from the AI, I get new ideas that I want to emphasize on. So keep iterating until you're happy, and don't give up too early. I give an example: weak prompt, improved prompt. There's many different examples. And in the end, there is a link here that ChatGPT published, and I thought that was a pretty nice one. It's not very long, but basically 5 professional writers were asked how they use ChatGPT and for what. And in case you still struggle to find use cases for yourself, how to use AI effectively, or for what things you could use it, I encourage you to have a read. I think this could maybe kickstart in one idea or another. Who trains AI and why it matters? So generally speaking, we are already concluded there's a lot of the big tech companies that trains these models, and it's very important that they take the necessary risk management tools and measure the effectiveness, but also how dangerous they could be in certain things. Keyword would be how to build a bomb, which should not be something a large language model provides as a knowledge. But yeah, it's very important to make sure certain things are being taken care of. Luckily, like I said before, there's a lot of other companies that watch those big companies and their models evolving. And a lot of that things are not necessarily to be done by you, but you should, again, always make sure to do the research, because there will be a lot of reports about these models. And the better you know how these models react, the better your expectation management can be. And again, a second question that is also very curious. Again, I will move on and then we can talk about it if there's still a few minutes left. AI tools, have you used any currently? Are you using one? And what's your experience with it? Have you yourself identified any situation where you felt, oh, there's a gap in what this thing can do to me, or it is a bias where the answer felt not balanced enough? Have you experienced anything? I mean, we all read something somewhere in the news, but I'm curious, have you experienced it, and what was your experience with it? Due to time constraints, I'm moving on. So what comes next? Outlook. So first of all, I think the industry will split up into two major things. First, it will be large language models. Those are the ChatGPT, Claude, and whatnot. But then already in the coming, and will be much stronger as we move on, small language models. So why small language models? First of all, they can be much more specialized to very niche things, where the large language models might don't have any knowledge about it. Can be highly customized. They are much faster. They don't need as many resources as a large language model need in order to run effectively. So, and I'm not saying one over the other. Don't want to give you the impression that small language models are the future and large language models will die out. I think both will have the relevance. Large language models for general tasks as a personal assistant and all these kind of things, but there will be very specific tasks that small language models or small models as such will provide much better. And I want to even go a step further. This is this sentence basically that I think we talk about language models all the time, but there's so many other type of models that could be built. You can replace the second L with an X, X standing for whatever, video, audio, any type of data. The language models are the more popular ones, yeah. And there's even large multi-model models which allow not just to enter language, but also to enter video, audio, and other file formats that these models can work with. So it's really not just language models. That's really what I want to emphasize on. Even if the news is dominated by language models, models could contain all kinds of other things as well. Maybe let me jump to this one because I really would like to tell you a little bit about
Got a 2-minute time check there, Gregor.
2 minutes. Okay, 1 minute. So REC is around the news industry, and I'm sure all of you have heard about it, and probably most of you have shied away from it because it sounds very technical and sounds like, oh my God, I'm not going to understand what this is anyway. But I just want to make it really simple, because if somebody approaches you, I want you to know what they're talking about. So what is REC? It's basically the large language model able to use a search engine that is optimized for their needs, to search in data to give better answers. Full stop. That's it. Yeah. So if I give you now a task and you don't know it, but you know Google knows it, or the World Wide Web has this information, you will turn to Google, search it, come back with the result, interpret it, and tell me what I wanted to know. And that's absolutely the same thing. It's the large language model. Basically approaching a state where they understand, okay, they need to search in a database, then the prompt for this large language model would have told this large language model that it is allowed or that it is capable of searching. And then as soon as the large language model decides it needs to search, there's a mechanism that the search happens, and then the results are being fed back into the large language model. The large language model interprets it and gives you a good answer. And it is a bit different than traditional databases, but in the end, it's just a database with knowledge. Could be all your company's knowledge, for instance, all the data, PDFs you have, in which the large language models can search in, and which is a much more effective way than training the models, and especially much less expensive way, if you want. Yeah, to sum it up in a nutshell, AI is transforming entire industries, and we are certainly not at the end. This is the beginning. Effective prompting is a skill to learn, so start early. It will help you. Make sure you understand who trains the AI. There will be so many models out there, and it is already crazy, but it will get even more crazy. And when you're confronted with AI, take the extra step and check where it comes from and what it does. Large language models, small language models, LXM, SXM, as other type of models. What I didn't mention before, but phones will do AI. Language models will run on phones to do very sensitive operations, so it's not being shared with other companies. And yeah, if you want to connect your knowledge base in the company to large language models or any other kind of these models, then REC is the current industry standards on how to do that. And yeah, maybe a final thought, AI is powerful, and success depends really on how you manage it, how you understand it, how you implement it, and how you also make sure the change management is there alongside it. And would love to hear from you how much you learned today about AI. Well, I want to judge myself, so I give my one in the middle, but I want to end with this quote. Actually, I found this yesterday as a LinkedIn post yesterday, but I found it so thrilling that I had to put it in. The synergy between human storytelling and AI-powered tools represent the future of content creation, offering unprecedented opportunities for innovation and engagement. And I think that's really what I also believe, particularly coming back to microlearning, particularly coming back to education. If we think of how can AI help me, empower me to create even better learning materials and creating more opportunities, there's a lot of room for innovation and engagement. And I'm looking forward to that future.
That's great. Thank you so much, Gregor, for lending your expertise. I know for myself, there was a lot of really, really great information, and I'm probably going to have to go away back through the Gnowbe session and chew on some of that. I think what was really awesome for me, just one of my takeaways was it's not, AI is not a replacement, but the idea of it being a sparring partner that enables me to be more creative and get away from those more busy, mundane kind of operations it's a really exciting prospect, because I think it launches us further. So that was my key takeaway. Make sure that you put yours in there in the space provided within that session.